Growing up in this glorious country, the love for family, the love for color, beauty, everything we share was mixed in, I think, with noticing that as a woman, but also as a privileged woman, that there were real gaps in justice. That as a child, you're sitting in your fancy car with your parents, and there are children of identically placed in multiple ways, but they could be on Mars for the different experiences that they have. Now today we have misogyny so strong that women are being chopped up and being put in refrigerators. The female labor workforce participation rate has actually gone down from about 35% in the 1990s down to about 25% before COVID. And now, during COVID, it went down to about 5%. Think about that. So, these are huge problems we're talking about, right? And you expect them to change over time. You expect them to go away with development. And they don't, unless you create hacks. Some of this work has already been done for us, and it's been done by the Constituent Assembly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and the colleagues who worked with him, including 11 women, Hansa Mehta, and many others. The Constitution of India, Chapter 3 on fundamental rights, this is one of our biggest hacks. It's only a hack, though, if we use it. So in the courts, if you go to the court and you say that my right not to be raped by my husband exists regardless of the fact that Parliament has repeatedly failed to make this criminal. That my right as a queer person, as a non-binary person, as a transgender person to be married and to have respect for the family that I choose, to have love for the family I create. That if I go to court, like many couples have, and say that it doesn't matter if the rest of society is half supported and half supportive and half not. This is my fundamental right. These two cases are coming up in the next 2 weeks in the Supreme Court. And my colleagues are here, Muskan and Aman, and working on this case very hard, day and night, poor things. We keep trying to get a work-life balance. And we have great hope in this regard. But what's interesting is that in this writ jurisdiction, what is the writ jurisdiction? Does anyone know what the writ jurisdiction is? Or the constitutional jurisdiction of the courts? Nobody? So the constitutional courts are the high courts around the country and the Supreme Court. So these are the courts that decide how the fundamental rights sections is applied. They decide whether this claim that I have to Article 21, the right to freedom, the right to habeas corpus, the freedom of the body, the right not just to life, but as our courts have interpreted it, the right to a good life. Whether I have the right to equality, I being you, and you, and you. Whether I have the right to free speech, however unpopular it is, however distasteful it is to someone else, and how to adjudicate that. Now, what's interesting is that it was in writ jurisdiction that we helped further another hack that solved a problem. Especially during COVID, there were frauds happening on a huge basis. People would call and say that if you don't give your OTP to me right now, then we will shut down your bank account, right? You would get this message. How many of you got fraud messages? How many of you get spam today? Congratulations, ma'am. You've clearly done what the system now allows you to do, right? So this was a problem, and people there's an article in the Ahmedabad Mirror where the son of a Supreme Court judge, an orthopedic surgeon, but also a vulnerable senior citizen, were defrauded of 12 lakhs over a period of 3 days, just through these methods. So what was the hack? The hack was that the government, this government actually, came up in 2018 with the telecom regulation. It's called the TCCCPR. And the TCCCPR was a regulation which set up blockchain technology. And it was the first blockchain technology that was baked into regulation, still is. And what does that do? So if you call 1909, for those of you who raised your hands, right? If you call 1909 and say that, look, I am looking for a house, so I do want those calls saying, do you want a flat in Indirapuram, right? So give me the real estate calls, give me the calls between such and such time, say 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., but the rest of the time I don't want spam. Don't let people call me. Then not even will your own telco, say Airtel, be able to register that and block all of those calls. But then so will the other telcos, Jio or whoever your service provider is, Vodafone, etc. Unfortunately, this was not being implemented, and one day I was sitting in my office, and one of the largest fintech companies in the country came, and they said, we want to solve this problem. And I said, but I've never done a telecom case. And they said, well, we know you'll figure it out. We want you to do it. So there began a journey, a very, very steep learning curve, where we built a team of people who were telecom experts, but also those like us who regularly do constitutional law cases and other commercial expertise. And we brought the case to court in the constitutional jurisdiction that we spoke about. The entire case was online in those days. And the hard work of understanding the case to the extent that it was required was done by everybody, by the court, and the Chief Justice then and the judge who was sitting with them. And they said that these telecom regulations are not being implemented because there is no, what we said to them rather, and they agreed, because there was no incentive. Because the huge amounts of volume, right, only served the actors involved. So they imposed a penalty of about 32 crores on the various telecoms, and then to the telecoms credit, they have stepped up. Now, if you call 1909 and follow your phone and the directions there, then in most cases, the spam, the fraud will stop. There was a law there. What do we do when there is no law? When there are attempts to pass a law, the anti-discrimination bill that was framed by Shashi Tharoor and Tarunab Khaitan, an academic at Oxford, with some input from me. But Parliament does not pass it. When there is such massive equality, and when in the formal workforce, if somebody touches even my shoulder and says, say, hey baby, you look hot, right? That is sexual harassment. Do we know what the remedy is? Does anyone know that if your colleague or you are sexually harassed, what can be done? Go on. No, the lady in the back. Yes, well done. After that? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, go to HR is a good, but the Vishakha judgment in 1997 for the first time said that this is illegal, this is not permissible, right? Then came an act, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, which has the unfortunate acronym of POSH, I never use it. And this sets up the requirement under Section 19 of workshops in the workplace. And I do them because I find them exciting and transformative. And I find that when you prevent the discrimination, when you promote the respect and kindness, then there's a separate joy to that, right? Also, a policy is required in every workplace where you have more than 10 employees, and an internal complaints committee is required. Right? So there's a whole structure. So if random guy comes up, says, hey hottie, I have a remedy. Right? If I can't deal with him myself, which I usually can. Now, what if somebody comes and shouts at me and says, you are so useless at your job because you're a woman, I'm not going to give you any projects, in fact, I'm not going to promote you. Right? Do you have a remedy? You may have an informal remedy. You may be able to go to HR and say, this is out of line. You kind of try and dig up your company policies and try and figure it out, right? But why is there no remedy in law? So what we've started doing, and there are leaders in the fields like this field like Penguin Random House, is bringing in equality policies that are not just sexual harassment policies, and the companies, the companies that have implemented them love them because they feel that it serves their bottom line. PRH is producing better books. They are serving, any company that there is evidence to show that companies that do this make better profits, and it's just a happier place to work, right? Because then you address inequalities, not just in gender, but also in sexuality, also in region, also in caste, also in, accent and privilege. And that brings me to my last point, because I think the question that we ask ourselves when we attend these things and when we listen to disrupting and challenging the status quo, right, is that what can we do? Think about our own lives. Think about each of your lives. And the time when your parent, your brother, your uncle, someone in the network has picked up the phone and made that call for you. Where something couldn't be got otherwise. The massive inequalities in our country are not just because of caste. They are also because of class. They are also about these limited economic spheres that we have the privilege to live in and exclude large numbers of other people. One of the solutions, I think, is that of the Karm Fellowship. It's an initiative started by Radhika Bharatram, and it's a high-touch initiative where you get to mentor brilliant, capable people who don't have access, who don't have the kind of access that we do, right? And I'd like to introduce you to Parminder here. Parminder, please stand up. Parminder's dad, she comes from a wonderful family, and Parminder's dad is a bus driver, and she has, through her talent and through her initiative, through her brilliance, got a place at studying economics at Delhi University. So the Karm Fellowship reached out, and we were paired. Now, I'm hoping this relationship will develop to the extent that I am able to back her and to pick up that phone when required, to pass on the soft skills, the kind of thing that doesn't happen on stages, the kind of thing that we give our children. That's what we need to bring to the world. And you know what? when I die, and it's going to be a lot sooner than Shantanu, I don't think I care that much about my legacy. I kind of do, but like not that much. I think what I really care about is that while I am alive, that let me be connected to this thing that is larger than myself, to create beauty, to create justice, to create equality, to create freedom as much as I can. Thank you.